I do a lot of mining and prospecting, so I've become familiar with the rocks, and when I realized I could blend those together, I did that and started experimenting and practicing on my own garden at my own home, and then sharing it with other folks that they've been having some remarkable experiences. One of them you folks see in your in the pictures that Fremart has on the internet. One of them is a gentleman laying on a pumpkin that weighs 1,264 pounds, and he used my product to grow that. And then there's a multitude of other pictures that are available also. I raised radishes here in the center part of Utah last year. The radishes were 5 inches in diameter, 7 inches tall. And so it does remarkable things. So it's my experience as a farm boy, my experience as a miner, as a prospector, and then my knowledge of the need for of the plants and of we humans for all the minerals that are in these plants after I've had them assayed or analyzed, realizing I could blend them together to provide the nutrition for the plants and therefore for we people and our animals that we need. And this product we're talking about, folks, increases production considerably, whether it is in the ground crops such as carrots, radishes, beets, turnips, such as that, or whether it's above the ground, your tomatoes, your corn, anything, your squash, melons, and it puts the minerals back in your plants that give the plants the fruit, the nutrition for us. But it also increases the flavor so very much. When you would almost swear, if you eat watermelon, you'd almost swear that somebody's put sugar on your watermelon. It is so sweet. And your corn that you eat is so much sweeter, everything. It tastes so much better because it has the minerals in it that our body requires. And that's the way the Lord's designed our bodies, so that when we taste something not good for us, very often it's acidic. Again, I don't dare say that it'll increase your production by 100% or 200 or 300%. I have to say something to the effect that it will increase your production substantially. So the farmers, the growers, the ranchers, everyone, money will grow from this stuff just the way that you have to put it through a consumer first so he can pay you for it. But yeah, money grows. But the thing that our body really needs, the minute you bite into it, your body says, "Oh yeah, give me more of that." And so that's rough rule of thumb on that. But it just enhances everything, the taste, the nutrition, and the growth of your crops considerably. It also works on trees very well. Out west here, we have what we refer to as a bark beetle. That gets under the bark of a tree and will eat that thin Cambrian layer between the wood and the bark. And that's where the life of a tree is. It's not in the wood. It's in that thin Cambrian layer. And everything that goes up for nutrition to the tree has to travel through that. But once the beetle goes all the way around the tree under the bark, it cuts off all those channels, and the tree dies. A number of times I put this on a variety of trees, and it eliminates that bark beetle. If the tree's not already dead, it eliminates that bark beetle, rejuvenates the tree, and it takes off and grows back to its original form. And we've done that with trees in the poplar family. Out west here we call them quaking asp. We've done that with pines. We've done that with the white birch tree that's in your yards, many yards, the ornamental ones. So on your trees it works very well. Healthy plants in a garden are much, much less susceptible to insects. I've never seen a garden that had tomato plants that had tomato worms on it when this product was used. I've never seen corn borers. I've never seen potato bugs. I've never seen, the only only bugs I've ever seen in the garden was in my own garden here, and 2 years in a row I've had squash bugs. Other than that, I've not had any bugs at all in my garden, the common bugs that we're also familiar with. Hopefully you'll have the same results in your gardens, folks. The mineralizer doesn't necessarily overcome those at all. What the mineralizer does, it adds the minerals to the ground so that the plants can use them and utilize them. I've found so far we've not found any detriment to our mineralizer from those poisons and chemicals that you're talking about on the chemtrails and on the Roundup and such as that. So those things don't interfere with the mineralizer, but I can't say that the mineralizer can overcome, except that with the mineralizer, you don't need to put your herbicides and other things like that on the ground. I said don't need. I'll rephrase that. You don't put your insecticides and things on your crops that you would normally if the plants aren't strong enough to protect themselves. So I'm afraid that we don't have any statistics yet on, but I think I can faithfully say that it doesn't overcome them at all, but neither does the chemicals that poisons overcome the mineralizer. Because it will enhance any soil you put it in. Where I'm at here in central Utah, for tens of thousands of years was under a very large lake that covered from central Utah west all the way to California, and from southern Idaho all the way down to Arizona. It was called Lake Bonneville. I do not have soil here. I have dirt. It's just sand and pebbles. There's no humates in it, and yet I had the results that I've described to you with my Indian corn, my okra. I counted the scars I left on my okra plants last year. I had as many as 50 pods of okra from one plant, and that was almost all plants. That wasn't just one or two plants I'm counting. Almost every one of my plants had nearly 50 scars on it where I took off that much okra from my 5-foot-tall okra plants. So it will enhance his as well as it will enhance yours. But you mentioned tomatoes. This will put the minerals back in the ground that your tomatoes need. Here in this type of soil I just described to you, I would go out and pick at least a 5-gallon bucket of tomatoes, 1 5-gallon and another half a bucket full every other day of my tomatoes here in this type of soil. But let me throw something out to all of you that many folks don't know about yet pertaining to tomatoes. Many times on your blossom end of the tomato, the fruit itself, the tomato plant, it'll start going black and start rotting out on the blossom end of the tomato itself. Not necessary. You save your eggshells. Grind those eggshells up and put them lightly around, or medium. It doesn't matter. It's not too rich. Put those around your tomatoes, and it will eliminate that black end on your tomatoes. That's a lack of lime. Dusting is thin enough that your particles are not touching each other. When my son-in-law put it on my daughter's lawn 11 years ago, he put it on with a lime spreader that was on his chest. He just walked around turning the handle. And there was a little bit of a breeze blowing. And some of the lightest dust blew over into the neighbor's yard. And just from the lightest dust, there were strips of green out across the neighbor's yard that might start on the border at about 4 feet wide, and then in 10 or 12 feet it would taper down to a point and peter out as it got into the yard. But just that little bit of dust enhance the neighbor's yard so very much. Is there was a little girl up at a town just south of Salt Lake City, and she was the common girl. She was a little pudgy. She was not very socially apt. And as neither was I. I wasn't pudgy, but I was not a social light in where I was raised. I was a farm boy, and that's about all I knew. But this girl almost made the mistake of joining she did join an ag class with 12 boys and her. And, of course, they picked on her because she wasn't the socialite that all the boys were chasing around. And but in the summer then, they were given, the ag instructor gave them a summer assignment to raise a garden. And we gave this little girl some of this product, and she put it on her garden that she was raising for ag class. Folks, her tomatoes were up over 8 foot tall, and I paced off her pumpkin plant. And that pumpkin plant was something in the neighborhood of 140 some odd feet long. The vine was 140 some odd feet long. I've got pictures of it. And she had 10 pumpkins on there. I told her how to trim the pumpkins so you get the biggest ones, and that's just trim them all off except one. I won't go into the details right now because y'all aren't interested in raising pumpkins that weigh over 1,000 pounds. But she left them all on there. She didn't trim them the way I suggested. We don't know the size of her biggest pumpkin because somebody backed up with a pickup truck and stole it. But her second biggest pumpkin on that vine, and there were 10 pumpkins on that one vine, the second biggest pumpkin she weighed, and it weighed 147 pounds. And then as it went back toward the root and toward the younger pumpkins, they got a little smaller, but never down to small pumpkins. They were all very large, very nice pumpkins. So that's just one of the stories of this product on even the 16-year-old girl. And incidentally, she was pretty popular in that ag class after that.
This is Roxy, and I have two really exciting things. Last fall, I had a big chrysanthemums. So I saved the plants in January. I put the plants in a pot. You know, there were maybe 3-inch sticks with a little green. Okay.
Yes.
They're blooming. I've got yellow chrysanthemums in my yard. Okay. Now, but the exciting thing, I was at Claudia and Bob Rose yesterday in Ojai, and I had my trees trimmed the day before, which I have like 18 fruit trees in my yard. A normal grapefruit is, you know, you can hold it comfortably in your hand, and they'll attest to this. My grapefruits, I just put it in one little area on my tree. My grapefruit is 15 inches around and 8 inches tall, and I took pictures.
We have pictures of an apple tree in just north of Salt Lake City out here, where I personally put this on the red delicious apple trees, 2 of them. And the trees already had apples on them, and they the 1st of June when I put it on, and within 2 weeks both trees had bloomed a second time. Now, citrus do that, but apples don't. But they had bloomed a second time and put on a second crop of apples on the same tree, and 2 weeks later it blossomed a third time and put a third crop of apples on the same tree. And the nectarine tree, about 30 feet away that we put it on, did nearly the same thing. It blossomed a second time and put a very distinctive second crop of nectarines on the same tree. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago, and the tree still blossoms twice a year, every year since then. My sister's grapevine, as I talked to you about, she has a peach tree, and I have, I think Fremont has it also, the pictures also, but I have a picture of that peach tree with this mineralizer product, or without the mineralizer product, and it looks just like a normal peach tree. then I put the mineralizer on it, and that year that I put the mineralizer on it, that peach tree looked as if it had clusters of bananas on it. There were so many peaches on there. There would be as many as 30 or 40 peaches so thickly together that they touched each other. And there were several clusters of peaches like that on that peach tree. There were hundreds of peaches instead of 30 or 40, 50 peaches on that tree. And they looked like clusters of bananas. They were so thick and touching each other. In a greenhouse, it'll work as a dry product, yes. I've not yet put it into hydroponics, although there is another group that has put it into the hydroponics, and they're actually selling something like 35,000 head of lettuce into the Far East a day, and it's working well for them in their hydroponics. But I have not personally experimented with it, so I cannot give you a personal testimony on it. But in a greenhouse, it works well in there, although I do have a caution for you on that, because I've had it already used inside several times, and about 3 of those have been inside of college agricultural laboratories, but in a very short time, they have to move the plants outside because they get so blooming big, they take over the lab. So that is a caution. I really haven't come up with a solution to that yet, because putting that into my words, this project is so good that it'll take over your greenhouse. And I don't know how to handle that part right now, except to perhaps don't put as much of it on the plants and be cautious with it. Do a little experimenting there to find out that you don't just put it on all your plants all over, and then you can't even get into your own greenhouse. On those instructions, it tells you just a dusting of this material. I put it in a wire colander that you can buy out of any grocery store, and then if I've got a hill, I just hold that colander over the hill if I'm in a garden and just tap it a little bit and put a dusting out there. Do not exceed what it tells you in the instructions there, because every year I get 2 or 3 phone calls that say, well, it killed my garden. And my first question is, of course, how thick did you put it on? The typical answer is, well, about 1/8 of an inch. And what did I say in the instructions? Well, you said just a dusting, but I thought more would be better. No, it's not.
Okay.
This is very rich, and I make it that way on purpose. I could weaken it down so you could, put it on 1/8 of an inch, but that's not the goal. I want you to be able to put it on your crops the least expensively as you possibly can, and not have to repeat it in the middle of the summer or again in the fall and stuff like that. I want it to go on just one time in the spring, and then take care of your plants and vegetation all summer long. And it's been evaluated by our Utah State chemist. I'm in Utah now. It's been evaluated by the Utah State chemist, and they find there to be no potassium, no nitrogen, no phosphorus in it. And for you farmers that say, well, no nitrogen, I can't put that on my corn, surely we have pictures of corn, sweet corn, at 14 feet high. And an Indian corn is small in itself, will get 4 or 5 feet high at the most. I raised some right here last year over 10 feet tall. So even though there's no nitrogen, it's still, the plants are able to, the corn in particular is able to do very well off of it. So again, it is 100% organic, 100% natural.
In that out, because if you pull up one of those 5 stalks, it's going to pull up the root because they're all attached, I would think.
In my garden, I just took a sharp knife and cut off all of the ones that I didn't want in there.
Oh, I see. Rather than pull it up, you just cut it off. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, now what about next year? If this mineralizer is into the soil and we want to plant corn next year, do we have to refertilize, or are we going to get 4 stalks, 5 or whatever stalks per kernel of corn that we do next year?
No, because next spring you're going to go in and you're going to rototill and or plow, whatever, depending on the size of the project you're doing. So for 2 years, possibly 3, you can put it on. I would recommend 2, but I'd be cautious about putting it on 3 years in a row. I'm trying to keep people away from just putting it all right up against the tree or the plant that's in a pot. So that, because if you do that, then it's going to be a little too rich in that spot. So like say on a pot, you need to keep it around the edges of the pot. A 6-inch pot, put in a level teaspoon. Up to a foot, put in a level tablespoon. And if you're going to do one of the big pots that many people have in the yards and such, you might wind up using about a half a cup on a pot that's 2 foot across. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that, a quarter of a cup on a pot that's 2 feet across. But I'd rather have you put it out by the pot than I would just scatter it around, because we don't want to get too much up too close to the plant, because if you do that, it'll be concentrated right there. And it is very rich. And when you dump something that rich and pretty well right up against the trunk, you have the risk of it killing the plant. Yes, unfortunately, yes, unfortunately, weeds prosper from this also.
Okay.
So what I do in my garden now, go ahead. I was going to say, what I do in my garden is I put a sheet of black plastic down, and then I put holes in it and plant through the holes in that black plastic. And that way I don't ever have to weed my garden except for a few weeds that come up right around the plant.
The mineralizer is to become a founder. That's the only way we really have it right now. And to be able to get truckloads of this, that's not going to happen, because right now we got Pat working full-time, just chained to the rock crusher and to the truck and everything else, just to be able to get it on out to the founders. So be gentle with this. He's getting these out just as fast as he can. Some of the people that have questions as to how soon will I get it, I ordered it last week. If there's an issue and it's been more than a week since you ordered it, please just email us and we'll put a tracking on it and find out if it went out to the right address or not. Some of the new founders that we just got it here within the last week, I don't know that they have gone out yet, because we're still getting new founders. We're putting those emails in on over to Pat for him to send them out. It does come from a different location from where we have been sending it out, so it will not come with anything else but the mineralizer. So if you're thinking, well, I got my chocolate, I got my Siaga, but I didn't get my mineralizer, that's because it comes from a different location.
And in the process, I've come across a couple different types of rock. That one of them is a volcanic dust that is settled and re-cemented, and the other one is a humic shale with a whole lot of humates in it, humic acid. That's a good 60 million years old. And but by combining those, it supplies over 80 different minerals to our plants when we put it on the soil where the plants are at, and it being 100%, it is 100% natural because there's no chemicals added, and it's been evaluated by our Utah State chemist. I'm in Utah now. It's been evaluated by the Utah State chemist, and they find there to be no potassium, no nitrogen, no phosphorus in it, 100% organic, 100% natural. I have another component that I add to it that I've not revealed to anyone yet, but it also is 100% natural. As David said a few moments ago, there's 3 components go there, but this third component is only about 4 or 5% of the overall. So I'm about 48% of the volcanic tuff, it's called, and the carbonaceous shale is about 48% also. And it does some really remarkable things. When you plant a garden, what I do is I just go to the grocery store and I get I've been corrected on this by a lady here a little while back. I said, get a colander. She said, well, the colander is the plastic container that you strain the spaghetti, macaroni, your potatoes, whatever, through. And then the wire colander that I call it does the same thing, but it's from wire. And that's what I get. The holes in the plastic are too large for this grind. And incidentally, right now, since we don't have a large plant built that has a granulator, they make a granulator, and I don't have one of those right now. So all I can do right now to get this out to you folks is just grind it, and it's coming in a powdered form up to about the size of a window screen, which is about what they call 30 mesh. That means if you put 30 pieces of this side by side, it will go 1 inch. And so, 300 meshes, you put 300 pieces side by side, and it'll go 1 inch. 600 mesh, the same formula there. So, but this goes up to about 30 mesh. But later you'll get it in the granulated form instead of the powder that I'm only able to send out right now until we get the plant built. Anyway, in the garden, what I do with it is I take I plant my plants, whether I'm transplanting, whether I'm putting it as a cover crop, as I would if it were alfalfa or grain or anything like that. It's what they call a cover crop. And so in your garden, you're going to put in rows, as if a row of carrots or a row of turnips or carrots or whatever like that. Or you're going to put it in hills, like you will hills of potatoes, or a hill where you plant your watermelon and your cantaloupe, and your larger plants are going to spread so much. Let's see, I think, yes. And what I do then is I go ahead and plant my seed. And then I just put my material in a wire colander. Now, understand a little of it's going to run out as you're filling the colander, so I hold it over a 5-gallon bucket as I'm filling it. But once you've done that, it stops running out. It won't run through that wire colander by itself. So after I planted my seeds, I just take it out in the garden, and only where my seeds are, I just hold it over there and tap it lightly and get a light dusting of this material where I planted my seeds. Now, I've advised people many times, and some, as in one very good friend of mine called me, and he had rototilled it into his entire garden area and then planted his garden. Do not do that, folks, because you're fertilizing, you're mineralizing all the weeds in between your plants. You only want to keep this as isolated to your plants as you possibly can, and you do not want to mineralize all of the weeds in between the plants, whether it's in a row or whether you're doing hills or rows or whatever. Just make sure you just put it where your seeds are, where your plants are, because all plants just love this product, including your crabgrass and all the other things that show up in your garden that you don't want out there, and you do not want to mineralize those. I also caution you and this is more or less tongue-in-cheek here, but I put this on my daughter's lawn here in central Utah something like 11 years ago. And her lawn has grown so prolifically that she and my son-in-law have to mow that lawn to keep it dressed the way they want it. They have to mow 3 or 4 times a week, because I've gone there and spent 3 days with my daughter and measured the lawn every day. It grows an inch a day. So I caution you, so that you don't come looking for me with a pitchfork and torches, don't put it on your lawn. because you're going to be doing an awful lot of mowing that you really wish you didn't have to do. Now, again, tongue-in-cheek, if you have a neighbor that you don't like, give him some of this and let him put it on his lawn. So, because there's one additional thing that I want to mention, a couple things I want to mention relative to the gardens here, and that is in your instructions, it tells you just to put on a dusting, and it means exactly what it says, because every year I get a few people that call me and say, hey, it killed my garden. And my question is always, how thick did you put it on? And very often I get the answer back, well, about 1/8 of an inch. Well, what did I tell you? Well, you said a dusting, but I thought more would be better. Folks, it is not. Although this is harmless to humans, to animals, or anything else, it is totally harmless for us. But it is very, very rich for the plants. And too much of anything can be harmful even to us. But so don't exceed the instructions. Just remember, if it's the garden's not doing what you want it to after a few weeks, you can always add a little more, but you can never take it off. So don't put too much on there. Don't exceed the instructions on the first one, and if you choose, you can add a little more later on. But do not exceed the instructions. So on your trees, there's instructions on the instructions that should come in each box that you get on the diameter of the tree and how much to put on the tree. And those of you that are putting it and instruction on where to put it. It's better not to just take it in and dump it around the trunk of the tree, because that way, if you do that, this is rich enough, and that's going to concentrate it around the trunk of the tree and around the main body of the roots. So you want to take it out as the instructions show you there. Take it out, treat the tree as if it was an umbrella, and take it from the outside edge of the tree halfway into the trunk of the tree and not right around the trunk. And that way, if it's a little rich, the tree can go out and get what it wants, or it can withdraw and sacrifice the roots that are out there where it's too rich, and it won't injure the tree. But trees respond so well to this. Fruit trees, nut trees, ornamental trees, all of it do.
This is Perry in Sacramento, California, and my question was about grapefruit, oranges, and apples, and cherries, and tangerines.
Yes.
All of my trees are up against cement. I got a big pool in the backyard, and so I have very limited space to apply mineralizer to the trees. Where should I put it?
In a situation like yours, put it as far away from the trunk as you can, but if you have to put it on the trunk, by all means do that, because I've done that. My sister has a grapevine in her backyard, and it comes up between her foundation and her sidewalk, and she only has about a foot of space there, and I do put it right on the trunk, or the stem of the vine there, and it does so very well when I do that. So it won't, if you're careful, and the reason I say to, keep it away from the trunk of the tree is because most folks, many folks, not most, many folks will just go ahead and take it in and dump it on there, not realizing just how rich this product is. So if you do it carefully, and I would suggest in your case that you do it in steps, put on a light coat of it, and then maybe in a month come back in and put on another light coat. And if it still doesn't seem to be doing what you want, another one. But when you're having a limited space like that, don't hesitate to put it up, closer to the trunk if you have to. Away for, I work with measurements every day, so I can look at a tree 20 feet away and tell you the diameter of it. And I realize you don't do that. But if here's a thought. If the tree is large enough that you can hug it and your fingers either touch or almost touch, then I would suggest taking that tree and go out around, not against the trunk, but put it not more than a gallon, someplace between 2 quarts and a gallon around that tree. It seemed like an awful lot, but that's a big tree to save also.
Is that liquid, or would that be just the actual mineralizer?
That would be the mineralizer itself.
Oh, so it would take quite a bit. Maybe the tree, some of them would be like, how many feet tall? Like, 20 feet tall or something. But
yeah, a 20-foot tall. What kind of tree? Oh, these are oak trees. A 20-foot oak tree is going to be about 6 to 8 inches in diameter.
Okay.
And that's about half the length of your forearm. If you're not a small person, I don't want to say if you're a normal person. Let's say it this way: the average forearm is about 20 inches long, or 18 to 20 inches long. So if and one that size, a couple of quarts around a tree that size.
In the mineralizing water that we're using with our animals, my wife's sister's dog was just about on her last legs and wouldn't eat, and we thought Lizzie was going to be gone real soon. And I mean, after a couple of 3 days on just giving her a little bit of mineralizer water in her water, she's starting to eat real well again. She's looking a lot better. So
yes,
helping her.
And you can put more than that in her water. Actually, if she's got a large enough dish, you can put a half inch or an inch of this mineralizer in the water on the bottom of her dish and just keep refilling it every day. And that way it'll leach out for at least 6 months. It'll leach out into the water, and she'll get all the minerals she needs. But you'll also find that she's drinking an awful lot more water because animals instinctively know the benefit of this. And incidentally, one of the components, that volcanic tuff that I was talking about, there's a company out of Missouri that mines it from the same strata that I mine it from here in Utah. They're about a mile from where I'm getting my product here in Utah. And they sell it to Tyson Chicken. And I understand that the Tyson Chicken, they feed it to their chicks and then to their big chickens as a grit. And it has cut the mortality rate of the chicks way down. The figure that I've been told is it cut it down from 16 to 18% mortality down to 6 to 8% mortality. And I also understand that it gives Tyson a healthier, heavier chicken to the market 2 weeks sooner. Now, also in one place out here, there's a place where one of my associates or friends had some wild mustangs in a large corral, and there was a rock that had rolled down off the mountain of this same volcanic material. Of course, it wasn't ground, but that rock was about 8 feet long, about 4 feet wide, about 3 feet thick. And she kept the horses in there for about 6 months. They desired that mineral so very much they had chewed that rock down to about half of its size by the time they were out in 6 months. So animals instinctively know this is very good for them.
If you're raising chickens, Pat, do you think it's best to put it in the water or in their feed?
The way you're getting it right now, I'm not sure. I haven't experimented with a chicken, but I can't. It's hardly large enough for a chicken to pick it up, especially if you've trimmed their upper beak so that they can't peck at each other. So it would almost be essential to put it in the water. Later on, we will be putting this out as a grit so that it can be fed to the chickens as a grit, and they'll pick it up instinctively. They pick up rocks to go into their crop to grind the food they eat. And once we put it into grit, they'll pick it up for that. But for the time being, until I can get it in that form, I'd suggest you put it in the water, if you will.
I live on a farm, and I've got a bunch of old barn cats. And I had a kitten that was born about 7 or 8 years ago, and I always thought the cat had a blind eye. It was just it just looked weird, and I started giving my cats mineral water about 3 weeks ago. That eye has cleared up, and I think she's seeing out of it now.
It does some really remarkable things.
Wow, yeah, I can't wait to get it on my garden. I've got some more coming, and I just can't wait.
The fertilizers, which are designed to deplete out of the soil pretty quickly, so you have to put more on out in the field, 2 or 3, 4 times a year. This mineralizer is totally different. Remember my daughter's lawn, we put it on there one time 11 years ago, and her lawn is still growing great. And then on the apple trees and the nectarine trees that I've mentioned, we put it on 4 or 5 years ago. They're still blossoming twice a year ever since then. So please do not water, even with a mineralizer water. Do not put it on your orchid every month like you're used to doing with a fertilizer, because I'm afraid that will kill your orchid.
So what I was using before, Miracle Grow or Miracle Acid, is just a chemical fertilizer.
It is. It is an extremely good product, but nowhere near as good as ours. But it's the best
and I don't like using
fertilizer I know of.
Definitely will never buy that again. Okay, so then that probably answers the question for my other house plants that don't flower. Well, they do. I have a sick Christmas cactus, and so I've cut that all back, and I watered it the other day with mineralizer water. So again, I don't need to do that again?
Not for a time. Mineralizer water is not as rich as the mineralizer itself. If you put the mineralizer itself on there, you won't need to do it again. But on the mineralizer water, you will need to do it, but not once a month like we're talking about on the orchid. Yes. I would either put just the mineralizer water on those, because, of course, that will not be as rich as the mineralizer itself, or a very limited amount of mineralizer on your cactus, because, like I say, you don't want them to go crazy.
No.
But I think the mineralizer water one time here before they do bloom, or a small amount of the mineralizer itself would be adequate for the cactus. A friend of mine had a Jerusalem artichoke that was brought over to this country way back in the 40s. Back then it was illegal, but it came in, and he's had that thing in his house for all of these years, and he says it did nothing for all of these years except just sit there. And it was alive, and the branches on that Jerusalem artichoke were drooped down, and they were laying on the edge of the pot, and they had it in the house. It was just a fixture, and had been a fixture all those years. He put some of this product on there. He says within just a few days, that plant picked up and raised its own limbs up, or its own branches up, so it was off the edges of the pot. And he said, in the 6 months since I put that on my Jerusalem artichoke, he says, I've done something I haven't had to do since back in the 40s. I've had to split that Jerusalem artichoke 4 times because it was growing so prolifically. He says, I've split it, and now we've got 4 Jerusalem artichoke plants, and still I'm going to have to split it some more. So it will have this effect on your internal plants, your interior plants as well. This product is so good for humans that I've not sold any to to people for human consumption because that's totally illegal and not approved by EPA yet. And incidentally, folks, it has also shown itself without laboratory tests, but it's shown itself to help to allow the tree to produce enough antifreeze to help protect itself so that the trees and the blossoms don't freeze out so quickly in the spring at such a, at a higher temperature. We've run across that several times now, that gardens. I got a call in December from an area that was high in elevation out here in Utah, and the man said everything was dead up there on a summit that they had, about 1,200 foot higher than the Salt Lake Valley, and they said that he said his garden, even his tomatoes, were still healthy and still blossoming, still producing tomatoes, even though all the leaves were off the trees, all the lawn was dead and everything. And yet even his tomatoes, very sensitive to cold temperatures, was still alive.
I am from Alberta, Canada, and I have a question on all these fruit trees and that we are not able to grow up here. And I was just wondering how well they do stand out in the cold after using the mineralizers and that. You say there's a bit of antifreeze that will protect them and keep them alive in the cold. Is there any chance of us growing fruit trees up here?
I do believe there is. Remembering the story that I told a little bit ago about the 1st of December and a 1,200 foot higher elevation than our Salt Lake Valley, which is roughly 4,800 feet elevation at Salt Lake City, and then 1,200 feet higher than that. And we'd been having frost down here in the valley since mid-October, and yet the 1st of December, the man calls me and tells me even his tomato plants are still healthy and growing at even though all the leaves are off the trees and all the grass is dead and everything up there. I want you to know right off, I do not have the proper laboratory and field experience with what I'm going to say to you now, so bear that in mind. But I do believe that this product is going to extend the growing season of Canada to be roughly equal to the growing season of our corn belt down here. And even living
that is awesome.
Yes. Now, but remember now, and don't blame Fremart for this, because this is just what my expectations from the experience that we've had so far. And I've lived in Montana, and I know full well, even in southern Montana, they do not have a growing season up there. There's very few gardens, and there's very few things they can grow. But I do believe that this is going to allow the plants, our corn belt, actually not to, if you will, move up to Canada, but to extend up into Canada and give Canada all of the advantages that we have here in the central U.S.
Folks, I don't see this as network marketing. I really see this more as network sharing. And because of the platform that we have set up here, I really believe that we're going to outgrow every other network marketing company by a huge, huge margin. And I think we're going to do it actually very quickly. In fact, we've got a team right now of people that comprises ultimately 26 million people. Out of that group, we're going to be importing probably 500,000 of their members here within the next 30 days, and probably another 500,000 within the 30 days following that. Now, these are people that, as I understand it, they're actually people that are serious about network marketing. Well, the head of we met, David and I met with the head of this team yesterday via teleconference, and they're very, very impressed with Fremart. They just absolutely love what we are doing. They're just they're so excited they can't hardly stand it. So when we talk about becoming a billion-dollar company in 12 months, this is not pie in the sky, folks. And again, this is a good reason why you would want to be in as a founding member. So just imagine if we bring in 1 million people. Well, what's a billion? What would it take to do $1 billion in sales with 1 million people? Each of those million would only need to do $1,000 worth of volume in a 12-month period of time in order to put us at $1 billion. Well, I don't think we're going to stay at 1 million. I think we're going to go to 2 million, 3 million. Our numbers are just going to be incredibly, incredibly large. So again, folks, if you're sitting on your thumbs on this deal, you're going to miss the opportunity to bring some folks in that are otherwise going to hear about it from somebody else. And of course, like David said, the founders are the ones that are getting our mineral right now. Now, after we get our shopping cart and our shipping all married into our website so that everything's functioning right, then we'll open that up for some people to place an order. But here's kind of what I see as a future with our mineralizer until we get our big plant built. Is it's going to fly out the door, folks, and it's probably going to get to the point where very, very quickly where the only ones that are going to get any of that, up front are the founding members. But here's another part of that opportunity is you can go out right now and you can share this with farmers, with gardeners that are eventually going to want to buy truckloads or millions of dollars worth of this product. And they're going to, be among the first to have the opportunity to purchase that. But how are the farmers going to deal with it right now? Just like you are. They're going to come in, they're going to get a few pounds, they're going to try this on, maybe a small garden or a small area, and they're going to see that it really works, and they're going to be there with money in hand, ready to purchase this as soon as our big plant is built. It may go further than that, as we need probably 20 of these plants around the world, and as our members, I think we'll probably be able to open this up at some point in time where they will actually be able to become investors in these big plants, which again, is probably the best place in the world you could put your money, folks. Food production, that's something that never goes away. The need, the necessity for food never goes away. So if there was one place you could invest your money that would be probably more safe than anything, is in food production. So this is going to be a great, what I'm saying is this opportunity is going to expand. It's not getting smaller. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.